Genealogy? What are you trying to teach racism to dogs? What are you doing? Is that new trick of theirs? Sit, stay, segregate. Segregate the other dogs. Doing poodles only in this part.
The dog DNA test one, I think is an easy one because you guys kind of own loving your dogs too much. Or needing to know too much about your dogs, or like kissing your dog on the,
sucking on your dog's
lick
face.
Your face. Yeah, that's very. I think there's this list. If we can sit down and we can make a list of. I think what frustrates what frustrates people on the internet about white people jokes is that they're seemingly okay. But if you were to say the same things about a person of another race, you would be defined as racist, which is kind of true, but also who cares? Like, I don't know. I don't think it's like a big deal enough to like send me a death threat.
I feel like sometimes it's about whether or not you're ganging up on someone. You know what I mean? That's like what I think is racist or not.
I totally.
It's like, it's about power and shit like that. So it's like you can't. Yeah.
That's a good point. It's punching down versus punching up.
You can't laugh at that.
Welcome to You Can't Laugh at That. This is the podcast where we take topics that aren't funny and we prove that they are funny by bringing on a comedian that has done just that. And today's guest is Sohrab Forouzesh. I said it right?
Yeah, I nailed it.
Did I? Okay, good. Or are you just telling me that so it makes me feel good?
That one.
Yeah. I made sure to listen to your introductions, like when you got on stage, and I was like, okay, but maybe they say it wrong. I don't know. Who knows? But Sohrab is a Chicago-based comedian. He's been a stand-up NBC finalist. He performs regularly at the Laugh Factory, Zanies, and the Comedy Bar, the Big Three in Chicago. And we're grateful to have him on the podcast today to talk about Steve and I. We're talking about the whites. What's up, Sohrab?
The whites.
Yeah, we need to get taken down a peg. So that's why we brought you on here.
A lot of pegs. Depends on who you ask.
Yeah, so many pegs. Depends on the kind of white person. Depends on who you ask. There's a lot of subjectivity to it.
Sure. There's
no one set answer. So Rob, what's funny to you right now? Just to kind of get the conversation rolling. Like, is there anything recently outside of the topic that we're going to talk about? Is there a bit that
I've been talking about in my material, or just that I've heard out in the world? Oh, I've been doing a lot of drug stuff.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of drug stuff. I've been playing around with animal joke. I don't know. I'm trying to I feel like when you have a lot of one thing, you have to switch it up. I have a lot of race stuff, so I've been kind of trying to see what else is up there. And it turns out it's just all animals and drugs, which is fine. I mean, I smoke a decent amount of weed, so I can imagine why I would talk about. Ketamine's a funny subject. It's a drug that both horses and humans can do. I've been really just trying to make that work for a little while. I think there's a lot there. I think it's funny that we get animals fucked up on drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to do something after we stopped using them to plow the fields.
Yeah.
Horse pills, right?
Horse pills, yeah. But you can snort it, too. Anytime I've ever done ketamine, I've snorted it.
Horses notoriously blow out of their nose and not
blow out of their nose.
Yeah, that's a tough one to get them to snort.
Yeah. You got to buy it in carrots. Carrots and sugar cubes. There's a lot there.
So, all right. So you moved over from Iran at when you were 8 years old. Was there was there a culture shock?
Yeah. I remember knowing English, but not being able to use it.
How did that... your school district, was it was there a lot of white people? Was there
in San Jose? Ton of Persians in San Jose. That all of California riddled with them.
Okay, did you guys band together and we're gonna?
No, I really didn't have any Persian friends.
No,
I didn't have any really real friends when I first moved here. But I didn't stay in California long. I moved to Michigan soon, and then there were no Persian kids in Michigan. Well, I'm sure there are, but not in Battle Creek, Michigan, where I was.
Okay. So how did you?
Imperial City.
How did you adapt? Yeah, it's near Kalamazoo, right?
That's where I went to college.
Western Michigan
University.
Okay.
How do you know about Kalamazoo?
I've done a couple gigs there.
Oh shit. Okay. Did you party?
No,
Party
I was
school.
also there for work. Oh, it was. I didn't go to the college. This was long after I graduated from college, but like
Okay.
I did like a couple speaking gigs there, and then I did some. I did Rupert's upstairs.
Rupert's is fun.
It was. Am I thinking of two separate places? Rupert's was the place where you could smoke weed inside of, right?
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
I
think it was like
that.
I think it was like Sundays or whatever. You could like. The show doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. But I went there on a Sunday, and it was a great room. They laughed at all of my jokes, probably harder than they should have.
That's great.
Because of the weed.
Next time you go, let me know. We'll go to my old fraternity. We'll pound a couple beers. We'll do a little hazing, a little light hazing.
Hell yeah! Yeah, those kids don't know what's coming. We'll bring a horse. We'll do drugs together.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Going to Michigan, like were you picked on at all for your ethnicity? No.
Yeah.
People are pretty cool.
Yeah.
When did you start to notice some of like the outside of the ordinary, like the weird behaviors that white people display that they're not aware of?
I would, what all started is I would, it's a frequent joke among, like, I don't know. Like, see, sometimes you're just with a group of white people and they do some dumb shit and you're like, man, fucking white people, you guys really, it's always a behavior that is, I don't know how to explain it. That's why I think it's funny. That's why I think it should never, that's why I don't think it's hack. That's why, because it's like this endless fountain of just kind of silly shit that you guys do. I don't know. I feel like, I can't really describe it. The dog DNA test one, I think is an easy one because you guys kind of own loving your dogs too much or needing to know too much about your dogs or like kissing your dog on the,
sucking on your dog's
lick
face.
your face. Yeah. That's very, I think there's this list. If we could sit down and we can make a list of, I think what frustrates what frustrates people on the internet about white people jokes is that they're seemingly okay. But if you were to say the same things about a person of another race, you would be defined as racist, which is kind of true, but also who cares? Like, I don't know. I don't think it's like a big deal enough to like send me a death threat. Or it's
I feel like sometimes it's about whether or not you're ganging up on someone. You know what I mean? That's like what I think is racist or not.
I totally.
It's like, it's about power and shit like that. So it's like you can't. Yeah,
that's a good point. Is it's punching down versus punching up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it came from. That's actually a really good question. I mean, I got a lot of my friends are white, so I feel like, and I'm not shy about calling, like, making a joke about silly shit they do. Like, if you come over and you're like, hey, I'm going to go do some goat yoga, I'm going to be like, okay, that's some silly white people shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's about feeling threatened and oppressed, where it's like, all this stuff is so frivolous, and it's like, honestly, you got to be a weak fucking person to let this shit get to you. Seriously.
I think if I heard like a white comic give like a really funny take on Middle Eastern people, I'd be like, all right, I would never inherently be offended. I don't think I would, but I also can't speak for members of other. That's the important thing, is I can't speak for other people. All I can say is that if I heard a comic who was from fucking Dearborn, Michigan, like he grew up with Chaldean dudes and he has a fun take on, like he has something funny to say, I'd be like, all right, this is hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, it comes from a place where you're like, oh, you've experienced this. It's not mean spirited. Like there's what, like the one end of the spectrum is the fucking Jeff Dunham puppet.
I was just going to say that.
Like his puppet is the most here. And I've talked about this, that the issue with those puppets is it's not coming from it's coming from a weird cartoonish, like exaggerated features.
Caricatures.
I've never met a black person, but I'm gonna have this kind of racist pimp puppet, like it just hate like or like what is it? His Middle Eastern puppet is just like a skeleton with like a turban on.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't come from a fun. To me, I'm
No.
like, all right, that's just gross.
It is
But
gross.
but I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example of a white comic. Some of these new guys out there are doing like some pretty. Who's the one everyone loves? Who's super? I can't think of his name. He's like one of those podcast guys. One of the Joe Rogan guys who hasn't been canceled yet. Who
Tim
seems
Dillon?
like, yeah. He has some, he has some like edgy kind of takes that I'm like, all right, this seems like it's coming from like a fun, That's actually a good example. I can't think of any of, and I don't particularly love his stand-up, but I appreciate that he can. I like his stand-up. That it came out wrong. I don't want him to listen. I don't know. He might. Who knows? I didn't mean that it was bad. It's just not always my. I don't like listening to stand-up. Period. So
Okay.
I don't blame you.
I'm not gonna go out of my way to. But yeah, like that's a good example. There's other examples. Bill Burr. I've heard. He's got some fucking. There's got to be guys in the middle too that I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, it's clever enough. It's not hitting the nail on the head. And like you were saying with Jeff Dunham, it's a character. It's like he's done zero research. He knows zero Arabs.
Yeah.
And now he's building this off of what he perceives to be, rather than actually doing his research, which would be authentically funnier.
You know who I spent the most time making Middle Eastern jokes with in college was my military buddies, because I had a ton of dudes in my fraternity who were veterans, and they knew Middle Eastern culture. The ones who were stationed in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan and Iran, like if I like even the languages are a little bit the same. Like if I hear someone from Afghanistan talking on the news, I can kind of pick up a few words. There's a lot of similarities in their cultures. Mm-hmm. So he knew, he knows all the jokes. Those motherfuckers would call me Habibi and shit. Like, it was very disarming. And I'm like, you're a country ass, white dude with camo on. But about tea time. About, gift giving. You know how important that is. Or, they knew all these little intricate details. So I would always fuck around with them. And I was like, oh, you were forced to live, you had to live in these. And they weren't, violent dudes. They weren't, like I was over there, blowing people up. They were like, no, I was a medic. Or I was, a... or the ones who did some shit kept it quiet. They never told me. But those were the ones that I joked around with the most because they got it. They were, ingrained. It came from a warm place. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's intent it has a lot to do with whether a joke works or not.
Yeah.
You got to make that so clear too. Some comics are just so dry or inexperienced and they don't know how to send the right tone to the audience. And then it's a big ambiguous thing.
Tonality is huge. That's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's I see where you're going with this, but you didn't establish that you're doing it from a good place. So you're not going to win the audience over. Right.
And I think everyone should know that tonality is knowing your limits too. Because sometimes I'll hear something in a tone, I'm like, I couldn't pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
I have no business giving my opinion on certain things because I'm just a 32-year-old Middle Eastern dude. I shouldn't be giving my opinions on things that mean a lot to other people. I'm never going to get out there and give my hot take on Cosby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm just not equipped. I'm going to sound like an asshole. Even if I have some rough joke about it, I just know my limits where I'm I'm going to stay in my fucking lane and I'll let other people handle that.
Yeah. 100%.
Or that's a bad example, but I'm thinking anything of that shit, anything to do with creepy fucking dudes being rapey and shit. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to make light of something, but for some reason I can get away with race. So I'm going to stick to that. That one seems to work for me.
And you got to know the visual of it too.
The optics of it are big too.
Right. Yeah. Let's go into your bit. So Jeremy, would you pull that up for us, please? Because you kind of make your intent clear in a couple of different ways, and I want to play the bit so I'm not referencing something that they haven't listened to yet, so they know what we're actually talking about here. So,
wow, that's great. You can see my subscribers. That's wonderful. I'm very subscribe, people. I need more.
Hey, man, 5,000. That's that's 4,000 more than I have.
Yeah, but look how poorly I'm doing on the right-hand side. This guy's got 6 million, 16 million. Oh, this guy's just homeless guy spitting some truth. He's got 16 million. All right, maybe that's
no dislikes.
That's what you need.
71-0. 72
72
and 0.
and 0. There it is.
YouTube
there it
got-
is.
I don't know how that happened. It did not look like. I don't know what's going on with YouTube's algorithm, but at one point that had a worrying amount of dislikes.
Well, they all undisliked because they came around.
Maybe. I think it was it had like 15 or 20, and I was like, oh, that's getting bad.
I think
They had a change of heart.
I think you need to change your title and your keywords. It needs to be a Middle Eastern guy spits some truth.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Destroys white people.
Yeah.
Destroying you guys.
All right. Jeremy, take it away.
Am I the only Middle Eastern person in here? Is that how that works out? All right, I am. That's weird. I got 2 in the front. Hell yeah. 3's the limit. Don't let any more in. Any more come in here. This is technically a hookah lounge, so let's be careful. We're going to start selling cell phone accessories in the back. It's going to be bad. I came up here trying not to make fun of white people. I feel like I make fun of white people too much. I don't want to do that. But here's the thing. Every time I stop making fun of you guys, y'all do something and you just pull me right back into it. That's the problem. You know what I just found out? I found out white people are out here giving their dogs DNA tests. That's infuriating. You're taking blood from your dog and you're sending it to a lab to figure out its genealogy. What are you trying to teach racism to dogs? What are you doing? Is that new trick of theirs? Sit, stay, segregate. Segregate the other dogs. Doing poodles only in this part. I'm an expert on white people. And there's a lot to keep track of. I deserve a little bit of credit. There's a lot to memorize when it comes to white people. You got Lacroix, you got Lacroix, and then you got Lacoste. Those are 3 separate things. They're identical.
I don't do that joke anymore. I'm gonna write that down. I gotta start doing that.
Yeah,
that's good.
It's good wordplay.
Why do I not do
That's
that?
a fact. You can have that one. Zookeepers. Too much khaki, too many pockets. It's a stupid look. Khaki shirt tucked into khaki pants with 60 pockets. Bird seed in one of the pockets. It's stupid. Look, you got a pet parakeet at home. I hate it. White people also love Trader Joe's. That's another fact. You fucking love Trader Joe's. There you go. You love it. You are Trader Joe. I could kidnap you at gunpoint, slap you around, throw you in the back of a van, take you to Trader Joe's. You would drop the charges. You know that about yourself. You'd be like, that was a weird Uber ride. I don't know what to do about that.
I love that zookeeper thing too.
Yeah.
It's just fun to say.
Yeah, it's so true though too.
It is the little bird seed.
I don't even know
caveat.
where that one came from. That's one stage once, and I was like, "Oh, that gotta pop."
Mhm.
You know, a lot of that shit would happen. A lot of that people stuff came from Rosemont, Zany's Rosemont,
Okay.
because I figured out that I remember they were one of the first clubs to give me a shot featuring. So I would do Old Town. Old Town is beautiful. It's the most beautiful club in the world. I love it. Probably because they have my picture up. So
Really brings the room together.
yeah, it really brings the room together. To be fair, they have a picture. They have pictures of like 100,000 other comics up. So it's not. But there's some good ones in that list. I love that room. And I remember when they would make you do Rosemont, I'd be like, oh, I gotta go to the fucking suburbs. I gotta go by this like outlet mall, by the airport. Like you're so but it's a hot room of suburban, self-hating white people, man. And I would just. They would never. I remember Zanies would be like, "Don't riff. Like, don't. You're featuring. Do your shit. Get off stage." And I would break that rule, and they would let me get away with it because I would just riff with them. And I think Zookeepers just came. This dude literally had too much khaki on. And I was like, "Man, you're out here dressed like a zookeeper." And I was like, "Oh fuck." I should have paid them that weekend. That joke has brought me so much fucking use. That's one of those jokes I can put a monetary amount on that gets me out of jams. I can drop that and that's my barometer of if it's a tough crowd. If they don't like that joke, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
I know right away. I'm like, okay, you guys are weird about race jokes because it's so easy. It's so palatable that if that's the one you got beef with, it's going to be a tough ride.
Right.
All right.
So I got to switch. Yeah. I got to switch things up.
Looking
Cargo
like
pants are my
Jack
Yeah.
This
Sure
also, that
can.
joke was also, I think I had that in my head because when I was bartending, there was a dude who would, his name was Miles, and he would wear like those jackets that photographers wear that had all those pockets.
Mhm.
And then he would wear cargo pants with like a million pockets, and he had like a dumb like hat. Like we always looked like he was on a safari, but he lived like a block away from the bar. We'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing, dude?"
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it came from that, and I think I just always had that in my brain and was like, I got to do something with that. But it's one of those things where I think when you're new to stand-up, you see something like that, and you like write a big long joke about it. You write like a page of like, this guy comes into my bar and he wears all these outfits, and we say he looks like he's on a safari. And I think when you have some experience, you're like, no, that is a 45-second pop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Don't need to go into it. You just have it. It's one of those things where you're like, if you have it in your brain, other people are probably going to have it in their brain too.
Right.
Mhm.
Pages. I have pages and pages about like one singular topic. And then after time, I realized, oh, there's just one joke.
There's just one. Yeah. That's a really fun moment in stand-up where you're like, I wrote 2 pages to say 30 seconds.
Yep. Yep. Or I mean, every once in a while, the opposite is true too, where it's like,
Fair enough.
there's one joke here. And then,
you have something small that becomes, something much bigger.
Unpacks a lot.
Right. And before, speaking of unpacking, before we unpack the your bit, you said, getting away with riffing, or is that kind of who you are as a comic? Do you discover jokes while you're on stage?
Yeah, I do it much more. I don't think I flourish in open mics. I'm not I've paid attention to how I act at open mics. I go under my time. I go very fast. I essentially, all I do with open mics is I just try to see if word economy, like, do these 3 words sound good together enough for someone to chuckle?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I can make a comic, if I can, like, because you guys done open mics. If you're lucky, there's like a dozen people there. Well, that's Chicago. I don't know about Ohio.
Right.
Like if you go to like the Comedy Bar open mic, if you're lucky, there's gonna be like 6 to 12 audience members. If you're unlucky, it'll be 1 or 2 audience member in all comics, right? So even if you can get one little chuckle, you're like, all right, these words are appealing next to each other. Mm-hmm. But I've never been able to riff at an open mic. I feel like I kind of got to do it at shows where I can like, and it needs to happen for me. And this is just for me because I'm very lazy. And it's not, I would not recommend this. I would never recommend this strategy to other people. Like you can't, I mean, this is so bare bones. Like you tell a good joke and then you live in it, you make them laugh. And then that's when you kind of riff. But it doesn't always work because you're doing it at a stupid time. You're doing it at a time where they're already laughing. So it's not easy to like identify. But I think just riffing into a warm room is just the most beautiful. That's where it happens.
Yeah.
But that's hard. I mean, imagine like, you're a year into stand up and you're like, hey, give me some advice. And I'm like, yeah, riff in a warm room. And they're like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Like, I got to do well and then figure it out. Like, yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, it's much harder to add tags if the room isn't on board with what you just said. Like,
I feel like that's why open mics always stressed me out because I was like, they're cold. It's an inherently cold space.
Mm-hmm.
It's where a lot of people die.
Yeah,
like they like permanently, like they'll quit comedy.
Oh, absolutely. I'm frustrated with open mics because there's jokes that I've done at open mics that I've written I've crossed out in my book, and then came back to it a year later and be like, no, that was just a bad room. That's a great joke.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just getting, but too much of what I'm doing is bad too, because then I fell into a rut where I was just riffing and in hot rooms and I wasn't writing much. So I think there needs to be this equal space between the two where you're doing both things.
Right. You got to find your own, like you got to get comfortable with your own style and find that sweet spot for you. Like it's different. It's a different ratio for other people. I look at open mics almost as like cold calling.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely not gonna crush the first time when I try a new joke. Yeah. Maybe not even the second time, but the ones who succeed in sales are the ones who are willing to make the 4th and the 5th. And I don't know why I did the voice, but you know what I mean? Like you build your confidence, you learn like, oh, maybe I shouldn't pause here and that'll get the laugh, or it's those little tweaks that I like to work on at open
always
mics.
Be closing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So let's get back to the bit. Where did this bit come from? Like what inspired it initially?
I can remember the actual dog one where that came from. I was I was with some friends who had just bought a dog, very cute dog. and they had their paperwork on the counter, and I was looking at it, and I was like, "What is this?" And they explained the dog genealogy thing to me, and I remember saying, I was like, "What are you trying to teach at racism?" And then it made my friends laugh, and then I was like, "Oh, well, obviously we have something." And then one of the friends who was there is really funny, so I told her, I was like, "I'm actually going to do that as a bit." And then later on, she sent me the sit, stay, segregate. She was like, "Oh, you should do it like that." And I was like, "That's actually a really good idea. I will do that." And it worked. And then I've tried that joke without bringing up race. I don't know why. It does not work. I swear to you, I'm for anybody who wants to tell me that I'm lazy and I'm a hack for doing white people jokes. I have tried that joke without that element of race, and it is middling at best. It kind of gets, there's something about it. I need there's something about that joke where someone in the audience also thinks it's stupid.
Yeah.
I need one person in the audience to think it's stupid, and it'll work.
You put an image, an expectation in people's heads when you introduce the topic of race before you get into that joke. That I think,
that's a good point, because it's got to do. At that point, it's got to do well.
Yeah,
it's the eugenics angle that makes it necessary. I feel like, because of historical context and all that.
I'm dumb. I didn't even realize that. That's a coincidence of that. That's just me thinking that's something white people would waste their money on. But you're right. That's definitely something I could probably explore. Just
the whole getting wrapped up in completely arbitrary genealogical shit. Like when white people get their own genealogy done, and they're like, "I'm this and that," and it doesn't mean shit. Doesn't mean fucking anything at all. It's like the sense of pride. Oh, I'm gonna start a metal band. I'm part Norwegian. What? Fuck you. It means nothing. So yes, I totally get why that's important.
Yeah.
And two, you can say one or two sentences that introduce the topic, and it unpacks so much in people's heads because of what they know about it, their experience about it. And that's why I love how comedy, you whittle it down to as few words as possible, but you're still saying so much that the audience has this thing playing out in their head without even realizing it.
Yeah.
And then you hit a punchline that subverts what they're playing out in their head or whatever, and it interrupts that pattern in a way where they laugh, and that's a symphony to me.
It worked. I mean, you nailed it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's why I like short stuff. You kind of nailed why I like people who pop. I'm a big Hannibal Buress fan. I think back in the day, Animal Furnace, it's 10 jokes a minute, It's just bam, 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 bam. That's why I like that shit. I like when people say a little packed with a lot, but it still gets, word economy. I love that shit. A comic here told me about that a few years ago, and it blew my mind. And now it's all I think about.
I don't like comics that tell. Don't get me wrong; they're funny, and it feels like most comics do this. But I cannot listen to stories And then she said, and I'm just yeah, a lot of it can be very funny, but it's just not my thing either.
Yeah, write more jokes into the story.
I think that's coming back. I think more and more people. I think the bigger podcasts and shit the more people want to just tell stories.
So let's into the bit. So when you open it by explicitly saying, well, first of all, you introduce the whole Arab, the whole Middle Eastern.
That I think it's big too. I got to get a laugh in the first 15 seconds, or my success rate plummets. I've learned that about myself. If I don't get a pop within, immediately, I will fluster. I will physically get nervous. It's bad, but if I do it correctly, it makes for a good set. So that race joke de-arms them. I don't know. There's something about that I go after myself right away, and I give them. I think there's a combination of you give them a little bit of information about yourself, you do a little bit of crowd work, it is the kind of crowd work that you're not going to get some asshole like talking to you. It's just a woo or a clap.
Yeah.
You take that little poll, and then you can bounce right into something that I would say has like a 90% success rate. That joke just hits. I think if I would have to look through my old joke books, but I think you can pinpoint the moment in my stand-up where I'm like, oh, I need my funniest thing right away.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think at this moment in time, that is my funniest thing I can get out in 10 seconds.
Yeah. Hookah bar and selling cell phone accessories.
Yeah, those two, the success rate on those two is bananas.
Yeah.
They
and
hit.
It's not the obvious thing either. It's not like the first joke. I feel like there's a little bit of legwork that, even though they're like simple jokes and they're punchy and they're funny, like a tiny little bit of legwork is needed to kind of to get the laugh.
I think I used to say kiosk, but I think people expect that.
Mm-hmm.
Both of those are ones I think. Hookah lounge is I would say a little. I mean, if I have to dissect my own joke, which I hate doing, but if I
don't worry, we're gonna do it for you.
Yeah, hookah lounge is expected, but if I had to defend that joke, I'd say I add the bit about if there's a certain amount of Middle Eastern people in the room, it's immediately a hookah lounge. I think that idea on its own is funny.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the funny part of the joke. I don't think the funny part of the joke is that Middle Eastern people love hookahs. I think it's that if you got 4 in a room, this is technically a hookah lounge. If I had to defend it, but also I don't have to defend it. I'm just fucking with you guys.
Right. It's like if you get 4 wolves in a room, it's a pack, or if you get like 4 geese, it's a gaggle. Like,
yeah,
it almost has that kind of play. Like, a group of 4 Middle Easterners in a room is a hookah lounge. That's a scientific term.
Yeah. I do have a bit where if it's a group of white women, I say it's a Pilates class.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that goes beyond too. Like the first line, people want to go with Karen right away. Is like the joke, and it's like that's so overdone this year. That's so well done. It's not.
I find that bit disarms them enough for me to be able to then do more race jokes.
Right, and you pop in and say, I'm not trying to make fun of white people, but every time I stop, you do something like this isn't on me. This is on you guys.
I remember
it's a great rationalization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, just a solid Godfather 3 reference. When Al Pacino's like, just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Yeah. So what happens? Like, have you done have you dove into the white people jokes without the
Yes. Yes, that is a hard learned lesson that I have learned. That is one of the. It's weird because I went through a period where I thought going up there with high energy and screaming a joke at him right away will work, but it doesn't always work. It's like this thing where like you have like I have this thing where I'm like, oh, this works now. I figured out how to disarm the audience right away. And then I got into it a little bit longer, and I'm like, oh no, that only works sometimes. Sometimes you have to read the room and be like, I got to talk to these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just comes from experience. That comes from how the person before you did. What sucks is though, like sometimes like when I do colleges, like I have to go up on my own, and I have to read the room while I'm like doing material. I have to kind of be like, how are you guys? Like, are you going to talk back? Are you going to, but yeah, it's, I have learned that if I go up there and I do that first, my odds are a little better, but even that doesn't work sometimes. Even that, like I can, which kind of sucks too, because if that doesn't work, sometimes they don't understand that I'm Middle Eastern. Like I'll get to the rest of my jokes where I talk about being, and they're like, why is this Puerto Rican kid talking to me about being? Like if they talk over that first bit, or if it doesn't get a laugh, or if they just kind of ignore it. I don't know. It's weird. My set can go, I've learned this about myself. My set can go wrong really quick. and it's like kind of tough to like prevent it from doing. I have to get better at making sure it goes well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like
I have that too sometimes.
Yeah, right? Like you're like, I'm good at this, but I could also go poorly if I don't. I think Jeff is like that too. But Jeff murders way more often than I do, which is fucking frustrating. But I think he's one of those guys too that it can go south at a moment's notice.
How do you respond like if that joke doesn't do well?
I do crowd work. I do a little bit of I try to. I mean, that's like your backup tool if you can't disarm them. If you can't disarm them with a joke, then you have to go into like any birthdays. Which also, but then you got to be careful because if the host already did that, then you can't do that. Then you have to, you have to kind of just scan the front row and be like, is there anything immediately that I can talk about? What I've learned too is compliment first before insulting. Like, don't. That has gotten me into trouble. I could actually talking about this is like PTSD because I'm remembering sets where I went up there high energy, thinking I was going to be able to get a pop out of them right away, doing a race joke, either any Middle Eastern people here or any white people here, having it fail, and then going into crowd work, doing something mean, and then just now you're in a hole.
Yeah.
Now you're literally digging your way out of a hole. I can remember sets and I've learned that lesson from there of like, okay, if the race shit doesn't get them, then you got to be fucking nice. You got to be warm and you got to be Mr. Likeable and then try to get back in your material.
Yeah. I forget too often to be nice to the audience or to compliment them. Yeah. It works so well. I don't know why I don't think of it more often because they really, and once they love you, they'll just laugh at anything. It's crazy. It's like,
it is crazy.
Yeah.
You know who blew my mind about it is fucking Sam Talent.
Yeah.
He's so warm to them up front, and you could see it on their fucking faces. They're like, I like this guy.
Yeah.
And then he can get away, and then he can play him like a fucking trumpet.
Yeah.
Play him like a fucking saxophone. He can do whatever he wants with them because they like him, and they're like, oh, you complimented my husband. You raised his self as the comedian. Not only talked to. I saw that once. I saw that little bit of crowd work he did. He was in. I can't remember where I was watching him, but there was this like kind of older couple, and he complimented the husband, and he looked so happy, and then she looked happy, and I was like, that's what this is. That's like the essence of this is like you have them for the rest of the show. He could bomb, and they would still be like, he tried. He was so nice.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like they were gonna be. I don't know. It's bananas when I saw him do that shit.
If you can't be funny, at least have them enjoy them. Like it feel good. You can win. You win still. It's weird.
You're 100% right. You will win. You will still get them coming up to you, complaining about the room, being like, "Oh, those other people didn't. I liked you. Fuck them." You're like, "Oh, cool."
Yep, that's happened before. Because like, we're humans. Like we have that. The instinct is to cut down because that's what we've seen. We've seen it work, and there's still kind of a lack of understanding. No matter how seasoned you get, there's still like that kind of lack of understanding why it works, like why being mean works. Maybe you forgot that earlier they complimented that couple, and then they just kept talking. But also, when you do compliment them, they're on your team. So even if they started out as a heckler, now all of a sudden they're on your side.
You're in a conspiracy together.
Yeah.
You're in cahoots. You have to set it up where you're in cahoots with each other. You guys disagree about the same things.
Yeah. So going into that, like the teaching racism to dogs, it's a nice way to kind of point out the historical racism that is baked into like Anglo-Saxon history.
Again, you guys are smarter than I am because I didn't think about any of this shit. I'm so stupid.
But you're smart enough to like know you're observant enough to make those distinctions.
Sure.
And whether you meant it or not, again, it's like, humans have this tribal nature. Like we grew up in a community, we have loyalty to the community. You get this identity built into you, like, oh, I'm half German, half Italian, or whatever it is. And then that obsession with the Steve you were saying, like the eugenics side of it, like, what's my nationality? I'm so proud of this nationality. It doesn't mean anything. And then so putting it in terms of like what your dog is, and then having dogs behave in a
you're projecting projecting the whiteness or the weird obsession that white people have with themselves onto their own dogs, which they also love too much. It's a stereotype that white people love their dogs too much, and then it all kind of coalesces together as like this thing, and it's very true.
Yeah.
We were all very self-obsessed, but
I tell a lot of genealogy jokes myself. And that's why I am like, yes, no, I totally get this. Like, it's and about how white people take it too far, but it's always about being part Native American that I joke about.
Oh, okay.
So it's one of those things where, oh, I'm not part Native American. Now I got to throw away my moccasins and my dream catchers. And it's like, yeah, it's all just fables. And I don't know why you care either way. And it's like, whatever. But
yeah, everything's built on stories. And, segregating, like putting it in terms of dogs and breeds of dogs, that makes the act of segregation in itself feel very absurd. Even to people who are like, I love segregation. Like that's kind of a funny.
Who says that? Who do you know? Who are you hanging out with?
I don't know, man. They got to be there somewhere.
Yeah, white people
Twitter.
obsess over breeds and the dog racism, and yeah, that's all real too. It's like it's definitely part of, like, everybody just knows that that's actually like based in total reality,
right?
And that it is funny. And
pit bull segregation laws.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, the pit bull stuff. Yeah, that comes to mind.
That's very funny. I'll write that down.
Us training dogs to sniff out drugs, and that has an element of racism to it. There's so much to unpack there. It's funny.
And you do mention poodles, so you got to segregate the poodles from the pit bulls.
Yeah.
Hold on.
And then just all the breeds, and the fact that white people made a lot of those breeds, and just like they.
I saw someone else kind of do this joke on the internet, so I feel like I can't do it anymore. But I was going to do a bit about how dogs are stupid because all the dog breeds are weird. Because I'll fuck that. I'll fuck whatever you want. I don't care. Want me to fuck? I'll fuck it.
I ain't picky. You give me the right time of the month, I'm good.
Yeah.
Put it
Tell me where
in
to
front of
fuck, man. I'll fuck.
Yeah. The next chunk of this bit, or bit in this chunk, whatever, exclaiming that you are an expert on white people. And then mentioning that there's a lot to keep track of, and then you go into the wordplay of Lacroix, lacrosse, Lacoste.
That's really good.
Where did that start from?
I haven't done that joke in so long. I know where the Lacroix thing came from. The Lacroix thing came from a joke that I tried to make this work for a year. For 12 months straight, I tried to make this joke funny, and it never really hit. So I just gave it up, about how I was smoking a joint in an alley once, and I saw these white people give another person their baby, and in return, they got a 12-pack of Lacroix. And I was like, these white people just sold this baby for Lacroix. And it never really, I didn't have an end to the joke, and people were confused by it. And clearly the situation was this person was probably babysitting for them or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, here's your 12-pack of Lacroix that I promised I'd get you or something. But I was high, and I was like, these people just sold this baby. And then I always liked, and then I remember seeing that one day and being like, why do I like that joke so much? And I was like, well, I think I just like saying Lacroix. And then as I was thinking about that, I was like, well, there's also lacrosse and Lacoste. And I was like, oh, well, there you go. There's got to be something there.
Yeah.
That's all. The origins of that one are fairly simple. And then me being an expert, I think, is true. I grew up in Michigan, small town. I was in a fraternity. I know a decent amount about them.
I didn't know if that was like a kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to like white people like having to be the expert on everything, even if they don't have the answers. Like,
oh no, that was just me. No, that was just legitimately me being able to carry on a conversation about string cheese incident or the early films of Christopher Nolan. Or
okay,
yeah, I'm trying to think of other things. It's a lot of music based. There's a lot of like.
But then you follow that up with, the 25% of white people dress like zookeepers. So it's almost like I'm affirming that I am an expert. I have this statistic that I made up.
Yes. I used to say those things separate. That's just I used to say those things separately. I think I every comic goes through this where they like have these things at work, and then one day you have this epiphany where you're like, why don't I just put them together?
That's the best.
Right? Yeah. Like having a set, like you have 5 minutes on a topic. Like that's, I think the goal should be for people.
That's the best, making those
Yeah.
connections
Yeah.
in itself. The Trader Joe's portion of it, I can see. So we were talking before we started recording about how you've had to defend the bit more to fellow comics for it being quote unquote hack.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the part where that they call out the Trader Joe part?
Yes.
Okay.
It's definitely this part. I don't know why this part pisses people off. I don't know why this part pisses comics off. I don't know why my white people jokes in general get under. And not to even say it. It's been years since I've had to defend them. I just remember back in the day when I was like, when I first was putting this shit together and it was hot and I was killing with it. Dudes would get comics get a couple drinks in them and be like, yeah, you gotta just lay off the race stuff, man. Like, I feel like you do too much. And I'm like, come on, it's 3 minutes, it's fun.
That's
I think
stupid.
people are annoyed because it's simple and it gets a big reaction.
That's it.
But I also, that's why I wrote it. That's why I did. That's why I do it. Also, the Trader Joe's thing works because it's fake crowd work. Fake crowd work is like the easiest tool we have. I don't know why more people don't do the pseudo. It seems like you just wrote it. It seems like you're saying it for the first time right now because you're incorporating an audience member. That's something.
No, you're right.
That's something that I learned a few years ago when I saw another comic do it, where he was doing that shit, and I went up to him after a show, and I was like, "That's incredible that you were coming up with all that stuff in the moment." He's like, "No," and he explained it to me. He was like, "No, dude, it's not that hard. If you just pull in an audience member, people will just assume that it's ad-libbed." And I was like, "Oh, that's fucking brilliant." And I sat on that for like months before I finally was able to learn how to do it. And I still do it. I think I try to do it. That's why I do a lot of pointing and like, if you just bring them in,
You are Trader Joe.
Things will hit harder. Things will, it'll sprinkle
Totally.
a little bit of spice.
It's that connection where you really are talking to them instead of reciting at them.
Yes.
They contrived crowd work is the best way to make it conversational. And that's what we all, at least most comics need to try to do that because it's the best way to connect with the audience. Obviously, other people do characters or whatever little specific things that are exemptions. But generally, I feel like that's a good thing to do and know how to do.
Yeah.
Did you say you focus on the one Trader Joe in the audience?
That's the success rate on that is bananas.
Yeah.
There's something about that where you are Trader Joe. That every time.
They cheered, didn't they?
Huh?
Didn't they cheer when you did that?
Oh, yeah. At Laugh, I got like a list of things that if it's a weekend at Laugh Factory, it's too easy. It's fish in a barrel if I do these jokes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I feel lazy sometimes doing them. But I'm addicted to them. I've come to that conclusion. I've spent a lot of I think a lot of comics did this. They came out of the pandemic and they fell out of love with their old jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Yeah, right. I think I've universally talked to other comics where they're like, "Oh, this is happening to me too." I would feel bored and ill and I feel annoyed at myself doing the same material. Like I remember when I was getting gigs right out of the pandemic, I would do this literally what's in that clip, and I'd be like, "What the fuck am I doing?" Like I've had these jokes for years. Like now, because your brain counts the last year as a year, you're like, "I've had these jokes for years." You're kind of being addicted. You're being addicted to yourself, but but that's how I feel. And I was like, I can't. I got to write new stuff. I got to get out there. But I'm legitimately addicted to these jokes because of the fucking how much they can get an audience to react.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I have to I wish I could go to some kind of Alcoholics Anonymous, get a sponsor or something and be like, "Oh, I'm thinking about it now." And they're like, "No, do your new shit, bomb. Do poorly." That's what I need to teach myself how to do is to kind of eat shit once, pick and choose where I'm eating shit. I don't know, but I'm too lazy. I'm too hooked on this fucking dopamine of oh, this joke will hit 90% of the time.
Would you adjust an old joke a little bit, move order around a little bit, or add?
I tried that for a little bit. I tried that for a little bit because I felt like maybe that would make me happy. That would make me have fun again because I just felt like I wasn't having fun, but it didn't. You know what it felt like? It felt like reorganizing a messy room. You're not actually fixing the problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't feel like I was genuinely doing anything But then I started doing like this new shit I told you, like when you were like, oh, do you have anything in your mind that you think is funny? That stuff doesn't hit as hard, but it makes me work harder. And I have to like, I'm starting to find things in those jokes that are guaranteed hits that I can kind of live in for a minute and be like, okay, I can find a tag in here. Like I got to go to the Burbs tonight and do 30, which is great for me because what I've learned is what I need to do is I need to do longer sets of time and I need to get them in the first 15, 20 minutes. I need to do my best stuff up top, be warm, get them on my side, and then live in it and kind of do the new stuff.
Yeah.
And then play with tags. And that's exactly what I'm going to do tonight. That's exactly what I'm going to do with every longer set I have coming up. And that's been working. That's been working for me way more than open mics. Is
one thing I've realized is after coming out of the pandemic, one is all my old jokes I tell them, and I was doing this a little bit before the pandemic. I was telling jokes as if like I don't like them because I don't like them, and the audience can see me not into my own old jokes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's just coming out. I don't like doing 5 minutes anymore. I have to do 10 or 15 because I need that time to get into the groove of things. So, yeah.
You're totally right. Like when you're not having fun, your body gives off like an electricity and
They
other
see
people
it.
can pick. Yeah, they can just know without even, they can subconsciously see it. They might not even know, but they're like, I know he's not having fun.
It's like you don't want to tell jokes like they're about to hit you. You got to tell your jokes the way you used to when you were excited about them and you told them with all the meaning and emphasis that came out naturally.
That's why I really like the dude who runs Laugh Factory. His name's Curtis. Curtis has seen me have these kind of existential crises before the show and been like, what the fuck's your problem? And this is before the pandemic. This is when I just felt like I was doing the same stuff too much, which is a tough feeling to go into the pandemic with because I went into the pandemic feeling like that. And then I came out feeling the same. I was like, oh, fuck. But I remember him seeing me and being like, what's wrong? I'm like, I'm going to go up there and I feel like I'm going to do the same 10. I'm trying to show you I can do new stuff. I don't want you to think that I'm just this hack who can only really write, who's got 10 good minutes and that's all he can do. And he'll like, I'm sure he deals with this all the time, but he just looked at me and he was like, this is fucking, please do your best shit. And the sincerity in his eyes, I was like, oh, I understand. Like, you want me to put on a good show. Like, you want the audience to leave happy. So it's my obligation to offer you the best material that I have. And if it's new and I'm confident in it, do it. But also do your best. Please don't bomb. Like, he just saw. I was expecting some pep talk, but he didn't. He talked to me like an employer. Where he was like, just do please, like, don't bomb. Like, it was like 11 o'clock on a Saturday. He was tired. He was just sick of dealing. He was like, no, just do well. I don't care. I'm never going to hear. And I like that because I went home with him. Like, he's never going to care about, I think most bookers don't. I think it's comics who think, Steve, man, I don't really like Stephen. Like, I like Stephen King as a dude, but I'm never really been a big fan of his work. There's a few things I like, but he's got a thing where he's like, don't write for other writers. And that's exactly what comics do, is I feel like they start doing stand-up for other stand-ups. Yeah. And then you're just going to fall in a rut, I feel like.
It is a trap because, you're not writing for yourself. And you're writing for approval. And that's never a reason to do stand-up.
I don't mind writing for self-approval. I feel like at this point I'm writing for self-approval. And I'm constantly happy and I'm zen about that, but I'm happy that I'm able to identify when I'm doing it for other people.
That's different. Yeah. So with this bit, like what was the original intent behind the bit? Did you have an intent other than like, oh, this is funny?
No, it was just a little, I think I don't really, I have things that I try to think deeply with when I write them, but none of them is in my 10 minutes. You're not going to see any of that shit. That's the shit I do when I have to do an hour. I've learned that there's moments, and I like those moments. I like when I do stuff about religion or politics or like stuff I feel deeply about, like my patriotism. That's like one of the things I like talking about when I have longer sets is liking America and how tough that is. Because people like liberals get mad because you're patriotic. Conservatives get mad because you're Middle Eastern. There's like no winning. Like I got no luck. Like that shit, like that kind of shit that I like talking about, or like I feel like I have their attention and that's fine. Even if I don't get a big laugh out of them, I'm like, all right, whatever. You're gonna listen to this for 10 minutes, you're gonna be interested. Whatever.
Right.
No one gets hurt. And that only happens very rarely. Like I got to do an hour like in some school like next week, and I promise you that 20 minutes of it is going to be interesting and not funny. And at this point in my career, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure I'll get there when I can have a tight 60 minutes, but that time ain't yet. Right now I gotta, most of the stuff you see in my short clips are just funny. Are just, that's it. That's the only reason I wrote it. I wish I had deeper like reasons for it, but I don't.
If you think about them, like, can you connect them through like a thread, whether it's a certain theme or something like that to
no, I don't even think
your set?
What do you mean? Like in what way? Like,
so for example, like one of my common themes is lean into it. Like anytime something shitty has ever happened to me, I found a way to lean into it. And that's how I discover like what's funny.
Oh,
and so,
okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Yes. I have two rules that I've recently discovered as far as thematics go that works for me. Never tell a story about another person. It always happened to you. I love that. That has changed how I write drastically. Mm-hmm. I've discovered I don't have to tell the truth. I can talk about whatever the fuck I want up there. No one, if people think you're lying to them, whatever, who the fuck cares? And I'm a huge Chappelle fan. And the joke that repeats in my head over and over again is his baby selling weed joke. Mm-hmm. Because that joke starts off so realistically of him being in the limo driver taking a detour, taking him to the hood. Then the story just kind of careens off this clip of believability. But you still are with him. You're still like, okay, in your head, you're like, this happened to him. Even though you know in real life it's impossible, you're still there. Right. I think that's one of the lessons I took from that is lie. Like, if it happened to someone else, fuck that. It happened to you. And a story can get as crazy as possible. Mm-hmm. I think those are the two things that I've recently added into stories where I'm like, okay, it happened to you and it needs to get crazy. I think some of my old stuff, I've discovered that it needs to be semi-self-deprecating or about me in a kind of weird narcissistic way. I don't think I'm good with talking about broad ideas. I think I need to talk about individual people.
Right.
To work.
You start from that place of truth too, and then it careens off with the dog genealogy bit. Like you said, your friends got a dog, and then they got the test done. Like
a lot of it comes from that place, so it translates over to it. I think, but like other people aren't. I have a lot of respect for people who can mix the two. I think that's where the genius comes in. That's what I have to start doing. Is you have to do both abstract ideas and yourself. Mm-hmm. I think once you start combining that world, that's when you can do a tight hour. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that's when you can start doing stadiums and shit and just fucking have loads of fans because you kind of fill every bubble that people want.
Based on a true story.
Yeah, right. Mulaney's pretty good at that too. He's not my thing, but I've always noticed that he's really good at stories are always about him and they go from 1 to 100 fairly easily.
Yeah, you've got to start in a place where, like, we have to level set before we take it somewhere. Otherwise, you can't start with a third beat, right away. You've got to take people to that absurdity. So
there are a lot of comics who are both lighthearted, universal, and extremely smart comedy all at once. And that's a thing I would like to do, although I don't want to like not be myself either. But it's like, that's like the most marketable combination that I've noticed is it's just kind of hits all cylinders and it's kind of a win-win in a way.
That's like the perfect combination.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you build an RPG, like, play an RPG and you got to build a character. You got to like pick your stats.
Yeah.
Like, where do you want to go,
The Swiss Army knife of characters.
Yeah.
Or whatever, where you can just kind of, get away with it.
Very rogue-like. You just described a rogue.
Yeah.
I guess if I had to describe I would say I'm a paladin. I beat you over the head. I'm just not very smart, but I'm strong.
Yeah, and you got to lean into that. You can't try to put on the facade that, the audience will smell that out right away.
Yeah. I think I'm smart when it comes to other shit. Like I but I ain't smart when it comes to stand up, and I have to be fine. Like I'm fine with that. I've come to terms with that where I'm like, I don't need to go intellectual. I've learned what I think is funny.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was gonna say, even though you might be hard on yourself about that, at least you're not the comic that's like, I'm super smart, but they're not, and then they're like assholes, and it's like you have a place of humility you come from, and you're probably not giving yourself enough credit, and I like that. That's good.
Well, I just like dumb comedy. Like that's what I ingest. That's what I digest. So I feel like I have to be kind of like honest about that.
Yeah.
Do you mean silly?
I love silly.
Dude, I think that's so much funnier than smart comedy now. Like I do too much wordplay and stuff that's like more clever than it is like gut-bustingly hilarious. And like I get so sick of it. I'm done with it, I think. I'm like, I just cannot stand wordplay anymore. Or just shit like that. Like that shit's silly shit is so much fun. Characters, hilarious. Like just silly shit.
I didn't realize it until my girlfriend started making fun of me because I kept recommending her music. Like I got a decent record collection, and I was on a huge Talking Heads kick, and she just got so pissed with it, and she was like, "Can you play something that's not silly?" And I was like, "They're not silly. They're very serious musicians." And she was like, "What's the name of the song you're listening to?" And I was like, "Making Flippy Floppy." And then I like had this realization, and I like kind of looked through my record collection. I was like, "This is all silly shit. This is all dumb, silly." Like Looney, man, I love Looney Tunes. I recently fell in love with Looney Tunes.
Oh yeah,
I mean, just
great.
Good. That's just good material. That's just good jokes, good visual fucking gags.
Yes. That's the problem with movies nowadays too. They have too many jokes in them and not enough visual humor, and that stuff is so much better.
I agree.
I fell in love with comedy through movies like Airplane and like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Just the absurdity, the slapstick, like comedy. Because it took me by surprise. I forget what episode we were talking about this, but comedy is like what isn't. So, somebody's walking and then they slip on a banana peel, and it's funny because they were just walking and they should still be walking, but now they're not, and we didn't expect that. And like that is built into like Airplane and
goofy stuff and satire.
The Naked Gun.
Yeah.
Like if it's goofy and satirical or satirical or both, like that stuff's great. Like the Ali G show was hilarious to me because it was both very immature but also very smart in its themes and its intent. And I think it was a really great combo.
I think Portlandia was like a really a good mix of that. Like
I loved Portlandia.
It was a really good mix of silly and kind of like thoughtful. I watch a lot of 30 Rock. I think 30 Rock is probably my all-time favorite silly show because it's smart. I mean, it's just like you can count how many jokes happen in a minute, and it's bananas.
Oh, it's insane. Every other line.
It's just hit after hit after hit after. Damn, I love that when it comes to my stand-up. That's what I like about my material. Is I want it to be quick. I want to hit you as hard as they hit you. It's a joke per minute.
Yeah, I was definitely long-winded when I started, and I would just describe things, and it's stuff's funny to me. But then after a while, I honed into just one-liners that turn into chunks. So there's still chunks of topics, but they're all one-liners. So it's definitely my favorite as well.
Yeah.
You do work a little bit of silliness into this whole bit too. Like that's evident in the dog genealogy, in the getting kidnapped at gunpoint and then taken to Trader Joe's. Like you wouldn't even report it. You drop the charges, and then you compare it to an Uber ride. Like there's a silliness baked into it.
I'll acknowledge that Uber joke. I'm just addicted to it. It hits every time. I know it. I'm sorry, everybody. I'll do better.
Yeah, well, you gotta lean into what works.
I was worried the Middle Eastern comics judge me, but they don't. I will say the Middle East, all the Persian and Arab and all the other kinds of Middle Eastern Indian comics. I know Indians are Middle Eastern. I apologize to all my Indian friends. I make that mistake all the time, and they correct me. It's Asian, South Asian, whatever. But that I will not. But I've never felt like a hack among them. It's a nice community because we all kind of have the same. I don't know any brown dude who doesn't have a brown comic, male or female, that doesn't have something about race. I feel like It's funny.
Mm-hmm. And it comes from your experience too.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Like, that can't be denied.
Yeah.
Right. If you had any advice for a comic who's working on jokes about white people, whether they are white themselves or they come from another background,
Oh man, that's a good question. I think it's going to come from crowd work.
Okay.
I think it's going to be hard for me to materialize how to write jokes about a group of people. That's a really hard piece of advice to give. But I guess my general advice to be, I hope you're good at crowd work, because that's going to come from host a lot of shows, host as many shows as you can. If you're trying to get good at anything, any set of material that has to do with a group of people, host. Put yourself in a situation where you have to talk to them, because a lot of that's just going to come from a solid thing you said once, made the room laugh, and then you're like, well, there we go. Like if you see a group of white, like look for that. Like look for a group of white people sitting together. Like that's always a really good de-arming mechanism. Is look at this group, because you got the whole group to clap, and then everyone looks at them. So if you can just think of something to go in, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. You can gingerly do that with any group of people. You can gingerly find something. I don't know. I'm trying to think of examples of like unexpected comics knowing something or saying something to a group of any race. A group of Vietnamese comics knowing something about their cuisine, or perhaps knowing something about their culture, or knowing. I have a friend that's his advice is whenever I do road gigs, he's like, Google the city, find out what the makeup is. Oh, it's 75% Hispanic. Think of something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think of something cute. You don't need to think of something mean. That's a really good way to do it too, is put yourself out there. Put yourself out there where you're like, I'm doing a show in Dearborn. Oh shit, 65% Chaldean. Let me think of something.
Mm-hmm.
What time of night am I performing? Do we need a break for prayer? Boom. Like shit like that. Like that's a good. I guess that's bad advice, is get more gigs. But that's what it comes down to. I feel like it
does come from experience.
Yeah. Do a gig in Canada and be like, oh shit, it's a room that's 45% Sikh and in Canada. Now I got two things to talk about. And then put, pen to paper and like think about that for an hour the night before the show, and be like, what can I do with curry and poutine? You know what I mean? Like, what can I come up with that's not going to offend any? It's out there. People have this defeatist attitude where they're like, I can't do any, like, I've had like white comics come up to me and be like, I can't do any of the stuff you do. Like, you absolutely can. You just have to be kind. You just have to be smart about it. It sucks that I get to get away with it easier than you, but them's the breaks. That's how sometimes you eat the bear and sometimes the bear eats you. You know? I got pulled over a lot in Michigan. Well, now I get to do race jokes. Like, what do you want from me? Like, I was a Middle Eastern kid in rural Michigan after 9/11. I think I'm allowed to make fun of white people easily now. Like, I'm not trying to say I earned that shit, but I earned that shit.
That's a fair point too. And again, going back to your experience, and like focusing it on the cuisine and the culture too. That's one way.
That's easy. Food and entertainment, and you don't need to talk about driving skill and fucking educate. Like, you're an idiot. Like, no, like, you don't need to hit. And if you're gonna hit religion, you can hit religion kindly. You can hit these little differences and know something about them. Like, have a fact. Like, have something that will make them go, oh shit, this dude grew up with, people like us. Like, let's hear him out.
Like, I love that you have the 10 commandments, but there's a new iPhone every year. You guys haven't updated once.
Sure.
Like, I don't know. I mean, that's just one example. It's just like, express that you have interest in it, express that you've done your research, and just
have interest in it. Even if you haven't done your research, you just want to learn. You have questions. You have questions about what they're wearing, what they're eating, where to go in the city. A good one is, where's the best kind? Oh, where are you from? Okay, you're Vietnamese. Where's the best Vietnamese food in town? Boom. That's not even a joke. That's just a conversation you have with an audience member that's going to disarm the room. and maybe someone else disagrees, and then you can do crowd. I mean, it's just you got to make yourself available for crowd work.
And coming from a place of curiosity too, like you can write any bit around. Like if you have a genuine curiosity,
absolutely,
when you're writing,
I want to learn more about y'all. Like that's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
research is big. I recently made a note in my notes to like, hey, research deeply into everything you talk about because you get so much more material out of research.
Tiny little things you never even knew. You were like, oh, that's a button right there.
Yeah. It just compounds the ability to be creative about that topic.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's flip this. Let's somebody who is offended by. So there's a lot of humor at the expense of white people, and now you've got these things like critical race theory that's being blown out of proportion. Yeah, I mean, they're attacking whiteness. They're why should I feel bad for whatever?
I am worried about that. That is something I've been concerned about recently because I've seen it more in audiences.
Yeah, they feel they're being attacked due to the media that they consume, and when it's like it's a misperception, sure, but
it happens at comedy bar all the time because they get a lot of tourists. A lot of times, not enough for I don't think anyone. It's a great club, one of my favorite. It's my favorite club in the city, but they get a lot of tourists. I remember I was at a show there recently, and that's all it took to drive this lady over the edge. Was a black comic doing a joke about white people, and she just why is it like? And I think her point was. And it wasn't a point because it's idiotic, but her point was, I wouldn't be able to say that about you. Which, if you really think about, you personally couldn't do it because you have no tact. You personally do it because you're not funny, you're not charming. Right. You seem to be a generally disagreeable person. So yes, you're correct. You personally would not be able to make a joke about another person's race. But I can find examples of people who could because they're intelligent and they're likable and they're not mean-spirited and they didn't ruin a comedy show.
Boom.
Because you're mad. And now you're screaming at the management. Like those things don't go together. Like it's never like those people are just going to suck anyways. Those people are just going to find something to be mad about regardless if it's that. There's always going to be something. I've luckily never really experienced a lot of that up front. I've gotten a lot of passive aggressive. A manager at a club will be like, "Oh, that table hated you," and I'll be like, "Why?" And they'll be like, "Well, you're white people shit. They left it on the note card, or they complained to me." But I find that when people are mad about that, the kind of people who are mad about it with me never address me. I don't know if it's because I'm Middle Eastern. I don't know what.
They don't know what you're capable of.
Maybe, I don't know what it is, but I feel like I've never really had to deal with it up front. I've had to deal with passive aggressive shit. Yeah. But I've done very conservative rooms. And I can't stress this, they fucking love it.
Yeah. It's a you individually versus a you as a group problem.
I don't know why. I can't describe it.
That's like personal, like a personal insecurity.
Yeah.
It feels like.
I also think I think I give off vibes of just not being me. I don't know. I feel like people don't want to upset me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I'm good warm on stage. I'm a anxious, nervous dude off stage. But on stage, I feel like the character I play is like warm and huggable and love, So I feel like they don't really want to talk to me after some I very rarely get it's weird because I think comics who are abrasive will get someone to come up and be like, I didn't like that joke. I didn't like your act. Because I think they're like, oh, it's okay to do that. I think since I'm up there playing this kind of like gentle, warm dude, they're like, I don't really feel like going up to him. And I think I get away with bullshit because of that too. I think just being, fat, charming goes a little bit.
And we talked about it too. I mean, you self-deprecate enough before you get into that stuff where it's very disarming too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So. Yeah,
I think if someone ever did actually come up to me and be like, I didn't like that shit, I would address the fact that I just talk about myself more, if not as much. And I think that would be enough. I think that should be enough to get them to shut up because it's true. I mean, I don't know what you want from me.
Yeah, it's different if you spend the whole set just being like, oh, fucking white people. Yeah.
As a white dude who makes fun of white people all the time, the luxury I have is that when people have a problem with it, I can just be like, fuck you, and I will flick them. It's one of those.
I actually think it's tougher. I think it's tough for white dudes to make white people, or white ladies too. I think it's not just dudes in general. I keep saying speaking in the masculine. I apologize to everybody listening. I don't mean to do it on purpose. I think it's tough for white comics, and it's kind of gendered too. Like I've seen like a female comic will make a joke about white women and people will roll their eyes, even though it's a really good joke. Same with white dudes. White dudes will go up there and make a joke about, white men, and then people will roll their eyes.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I haven't really been able to dissect that one. I'm sure there's some kind of fucking sociological shit that goes along with that.
Yeah.
But I do feel for you guys when it comes. I'm like, you have to, there's a hurt. I'm not saying you can't jump over that hurdle, but I feel like there's a hurdle for y'all now.
It's always just become such an easy topic for me to attack because I am white and I can do that. And so I jump right into it. I really go hard on it because of my position. And I do make it work because I've had years to like make it more reasonable and fair. But you're right. It is a little tougher, I guess, on that end. But then on the criticism end, then I'm just like, fuck you. You can't say shit to me. I can talk about a lot of balls.
It takes a lot of balls to give unwanted criticism.
Right. I do it because other people can't or at least other people would be less comfortable being like, fuck you if you were Chris. So I take advantage of the fact that I can be like, no, fuck you. Stop being so weak. Because I feel like I'm in that position, just be like, just to bask in it and be like, no, fuck you. I want you to feel a certain way about this. Only if I'm criticized, because we're obviously not talking about comedy anymore. It's just me being a dick. But like from a good place, from a very reasonable place.
From a very reasonable
fair
place.
It's very reasonable. Like we could talk about this for hours, but like, so that's why I do it. Because I'm just like, you really need to have some perspective here and realize that, it's harmless at the end of the day.
It's comedy at the end of the day. These are just jokes.
Yeah,
these are just jokes, man.
These are jokes. Remember that.
Oftentimes real experiences too. So it's like they can't even take that away from me. So it's like, all right.
Are you gonna get mad at me for how I got through this? Come on.
People have a lot to say in the comment section of my videos. So that's when it gets tough. I never expect, because my YouTube was dead for the longest time. And I think one of my clips went like, the algorithm of YouTube was just like, let me hook you up. So one of them got like 600,000 views, and then the other one started getting decent amount too. But I was not mentally prepared for the comment section. It was rude. The weird thing is, people don't seem to believe that I'm Middle Eastern because I'm kind of like, I'm light skinned, like I'm like I'm not a dark dude. So they like. There were so many comments that were like, this guy's not even Middle Eastern. I'd be like, what do you want from me? Or like people would be like, he doesn't have an accent. I'm like, oh, I don't have an accent. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't have an accent. I'm not going to
prerequisite.
Yeah, like I have. Can you imagine me taking that as like criticism and being like, you know what? I should fake a Middle Eastern accent. That's really going to help my career out.
Where's his turban?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Sohrab, I really appreciate you joining and sharing some of your insights and points of view on this topic and kind of breaking down the bit. Where can we find you on social media? And is there anything that you're working on that you would like to?
I don't have anything really big to plug. If you're in Chicago, I run a really fun show called The Love Below Comedy Show. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. You can watch all my clips on. Usually post everything on YouTube, which is just my first and last name.
Yeah.
And then my Instagram is some fun stuff. It's Sohrab is Brown. SOHRAB is Brown.
All right.
I have a website too where I post dates, sohrabisbrown.com.
All right. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you joining again and helping us prove that no matter if it comes to segregating dogs or Trader Joe's or having too many pockets on your clothes, you can laugh at white people. Wait, hey, Steve.
Yeah. No.
all right, cool. All right.
He usually asks me if I have anything to say, and I'm always like, no.
Just sum up the whole thing, Steve. Come on. All right. Yeah, and podcast. Let's end it right there.
Yeah.
You can't laugh at that.